everyone's holding on to their money right now, and no one wants to work anymore. Those are two statements that are said often in the world today, and I took some time to deep dive both and determine, are they true or false? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tribe of Millionaires podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Gruber, and on today's episode, I seek to debunk a couple of myths that are out there, especially comments I know that I've made and many I know in the GoBundance community make around finances, around work, around hiring, and so on and so forth. So one of the things, especially as we come into this sort of, I don't know what we're in, Alpha Gen, past Gen Z, whatever. Obviously, post-pandemic, there's all the concern about people not wanting to work, they all got checks, nobody has the work ethic anymore, and so on. But when I look back, I actually sourced articles written with the words, nobody wants to work anymore, to see if it showed up anywhere in the past, in past generations, to see how far back, if ever. So 1999, during the dot-com boom, the LA Times, December 99, quoted employers in traditional industries complaining that young workers were flocking to high-tech jobs, echoing a sentiment that nobody wants to work anymore. 1978, the year I was born, during economic stagflation, Jimmy Carter's malaise speech in 1979, July of 1979, highlighted complaints about a declining work ethic, and the Washington Post reported employers expressing frustration that, quote, nobody wants to work anymore. 1945, post-World War II, New York Times article in November of that year noted that returning soldiers were hesitant to return to factory jobs, with employers lamenting that, guess what? Nobody wants to work anymore. 1935, Great Depression. The Chicago Tribune published articles criticizing the New Deal in 1935, claiming the government relief led to a mindset where nobody wants to work anymore. That one might have some truth. 1916, an editorial in the Fargo Forum, expressed concerns that young men no longer want to work, citing shifts in work ethic due to industrialization. So going back to 1916, every generation, the old folks like me, have looked at the next generation and said, these kids don't want to work anymore. So it makes you wonder, how true is it? Now, here's what I do believe, and I think I do know. How people want to work has changed, for sure. We definitely have people that want more white-collar jobs. There is still a blue-collar workforce. But more than that, what matters to workers today is very different than what mattered to workers 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and 50 years ago. Our parents came up as baby boomers in the era that spilled into the 80s and probably the early 90s of like, hey, you go to work, you put your head down, you do what you're told. It's the education system. It's built for that reason. You just be a good soldier. And everything was about what's best for the company. What's the company's vision? What's the company trying to achieve? And what's your role in trying to get the company there? That's what it was about. And it worked because we were all understood and thought like, I'm here for the greater good. I'm here to make sure that this organization thrives and I can play a vital role in that. So today, people like you and me interview people and talk to them about, hey, let me explain what we're doing here in our organization so that that person can decide if they are enrolled in our vision. It doesn't work that way anymore. The new workforce, and there are studies and books written about this that I've read recently, from Dr. Sherry Buffington is one of them, that's excellent, and a guy named Jeff Hoffman, billionaire founder of Priceline and Booking.com, has talked extensively about this, and he's right. Workers today will work their asses off if you, as the employer and owner, are 100% enrolled in their vision. Jeff Hoffman tells this story. In fact, he told it at a GoBundance event a couple years ago in Miami, where he had an employee, all of his employees, he insisted that they have a vision so that he understood what it was. And that vision was placed in their office or cube so he could see what it was. And he had one particular employee that had a vision to buy a house for his mother because they grew up in like a little trailer, not even like a trailer, but like one of those little like tow-along trailers in the back of a truck. They lived in that for nights and nights. And he told himself way back when he'd never allow that to happen and he's going to buy his mom a house one day. So everything that Jeff did wasn't about, well, my company wants to achieve this and I need this guy to do it. It was, this guy wants to buy a house for his mother. How do I get him there? What do you think happened? That employee had stellar results, was fully enrolled and engaged in the organization, and did anything he could to make sure that Jeff's business got better. But not because Jeff wanted the business to get better, but because Jeff was enrolled in that person's vision. I take this to the extent of virtual assistants. I credit myself with being a guy who hears something and then implements it. I have a few virtual assistants that I work with. And I think for many people, virtual assistants are like low dollar, in and out, quick throwaway. Like, yeah, they're easy. Just give that to a VA. Just give that to a VA. My job, I feel, with my VAs is understanding what each of them needs and wants. And then therefore I'm enrolled in that. For instance, my full-time editor, he wants to buy an Airbnb down by a river in his town in the Philippines, and he's going to need $20,000. So whenever we check in and chat, I'm asking, how's it going? What's going on? What do you need? How can I help you get there? This, that, and the other. So this way, I know how to help him structure that, coach him through it, even give him additional projects that he makes extra money on so that he can fund that purchase. But I'm enrolled in his vision. He's not enrolled in my vision of, hey, I want to grow a massive media brand. I'm enrolled in his vision, and I can duplicate that person to person. I just talked to a VA yesterday, one of my virtual assistants / assistant for my GoBundance Emerge program. And he said that he had his anniversary coming up, his 9-year anniversary with his girlfriend. I said, what are your plans? You want some time off? He's like, nah, I like working. He's like, but I'm going to take her to lunch. I went in and sent him $100 to take his girlfriend to lunch. I'm not trying to say, hey, look how cool I am, but it's just a matter of taking that advice from a guy like Jeff Hoffman and enrolling in the other person's vision. That, to me, has been the most effective way to maintain stability in your workforce and to recruit new talent. Because at the end of the day, I think in this environment, from everybody I talk to in GoBundance, if you can recruit and retain talent, you win. Because that's the hardest thing to do this day and age. Now look, nobody wants to work anymore is one of the quotes that you hear all the time. I say it, trust me, I've been just as annoyed by Gen Z people who to me feel lazy, but again, the better version of me says what I just said to all of you, and I hope it removes that excuse and gets you thinking a little bit differently about the workforce today. But the other statement I figured I would dive into while I was at it and just do some research and work on that I hear all the time is nobody wants to spend money anymore. Everyone's holding on to their money. I've said this recently when it feels like things are a little tighter and, well, nobody wants to spend the money right now. It's tight. Elections coming up. The economy's been in flux. There's a lot of uncertainty, inflation, gas prices, food. People are holding on to their money. So I did a similar analysis. Like, when was that statement said, specifically in economic boom times? Like, is that a statement that was pervasive, that was everywhere at other points in history when there were economic booms? We've been in an economic, somewhat of a boom over the last 2 years. The inflation obviously has stifled that for many people, but for a lot of people, they're doing okay. So here's what I found going back on when people were saying, hey, yeah, the people aren't spending money, so my businesses are doing right now. It's just really hard. People aren't spending money. 2019, prior to the pandemic, CNBC noted that despite record stock market highs and low unemployment, consumers were still holding back on spending due to uncertainty about trade wars and potential economic slowdowns. No one saw the pandemic coming, but interesting. 2006, prior to the Great Recession, the U.S. economy was strong. However, the New York Times reported that consumers were cautious, citing rising housing prices and fuel costs as reasons for their hesitancy to spend, despite a booming housing market and growing GDP. Again, the evidence of what was happening was different than what the rhetoric was. I'm hesitant to spend. People were, but there were also people that were spending. Many got cleared out 2 years later. I know that's an example, or what people are going to say, yeah, well, they were right. Maybe. But the point is, at that time in 2006, times were high, and there were still reports of, I got to hold on to my money because, I don't feel like the economy's great. 99, dot-com boom. During the height of the dot-com boom, the Washington Post published articles noting that consumers were saving more than expected and showing a reluctance to spend on luxury goods, even though there was rapid expansion of the economy and unemployment was very low. In 84, Reagan era, with the economy growing at its fastest pace in decades under Reagan, the Chicago Tribune noted that Americans were hesitant to spend, concerned about the lingering effects of the 82 recession and high interest rates. So think about that. Interest rates just dropped right as I'm recording this video. Interest rates dropped, this podcast. And we're going to see them drop, I think, 2 more times before the end of 2024. So in a year or two, when rates are, lower, not like 3%, they're never going to go back there again. But are we going to be saying it like, wow, people are still hesitant. They remember what it was like under the inflationary practices we had for the last few years. Like, it's always going to be a time for us to say people are holding onto their money. And the danger is we say that in a way to excuse what I think we all need to do in order to get over this and get to the real heart of it, which I'm going to share in just a moment. 1955, post-World War II boom. Time magazine reported that Americans were saving more than spending due to fears of another potential war and more inflation, even as wages and consumer demand skyrocketed. And in 1928, we know what happened the next year. During the final years of the Roaring '20s boom, the New York Times observed that many middle-class Americans were hesitant to spend, worried about market instability despite booming stock prices. So again, that was in high times. We have some examples where, like, actually the times where we were past the hard times into good times, people were still hesitant because we just came out of bad times. Here's what it becomes for me, and I've had to teach myself this and get my head around this because it's so easy to say, yeah, are you struggling right now, other business owner? Yeah, people don't want to spend money. Yeah, I feel the same way, validated. So it's not us, it's the environment that we're in. It's Bidenomics or whatever it might be. Look, at the end of the day, people do have money to spend. Me, you, everybody has money to spend. But we do have to, in all areas, and I think as we get more and more savvy as consumers, we have to focus more on value for the money. Here's the example that gets used often, and I might botch this a bit, but if I said to you, hey, I've got this Lamborghini, $1 million Lamborghini. Do you want to buy it for $1 million? You're like, well, I don't have $1 million, right? So, okay, well, do you want to go get it? Like, no, because even if I had $1 million, like I do that other things with that. I wouldn't buy that Lamborghini. But if I came back to you, and you have no money, by the way, you have zero money. You don't have $1 million, you don't have $10. If I came back to you and said, hey, actually, that $1 million Lamborghini, verified, here it is, absolutely $1 million, and people will buy it for $1 million today, I'm going to give it to you for $100,000. You don't have $100,000. But are you going to get the $100,000? Of course you are, because the value is so clearly above and beyond the cost. So as long as we're showing to our consumers, whatever we do, that the value far exceeds the cost, people have money to spend and will spend that money. We have a value buying economy. We always have, but even more now because we're so interconnected with social media, interconnected with the internet, interconnected with education and all this news of scams and 24-hour news cycles. So that's something that I think we need to get past, is this idea that, yeah, hey, people aren't spending money. No, people aren't seeing value is what it boils down to. And when you say that, it allows you to look into your business, allows me to look into my business and say, okay, where are we lacking value? I'll give you an example. In Emerge, GoBundance Emerge, which is the precursor to GoBundance Elite, it's a community just like every other GoBundance community that we have. We looked at our community and said, hey, we think we give really good value, but I understand times are tight or people don't feel more hesitant. Like, how do we maximize value? Coming out of COVID, people were used to Zoom, and now there's a snapback. People want to get in person. So we designed a regional meeting organization, I guess you could say. We have 6 regions around the country, each of which will meet 4 times a year in that region, and this is included as part of the tuition and Emerge. In GoBundance now, we have, I think, 7 or 8 mega regions with mini regions or mini areas in between them in GoBundance Elite and Champion. And those members, as part of tuition, get to go to the regional meetings or the local meetings that they have and mastermind regionally or locally with other people as part of being a member. So there's an increase in the value because there is a cost. And when you say, wait a minute, I get to be around amazing people driving for more who are tracking goals and tracking results, and also I get to meet with them locally, that's a lot of value. So the cost, at least for me, I see it this way. I come back every year. I pay my GoBundance tuition every year. The cost becomes like, how can I not? That's the game. Can you increase the value so the cost becomes irrelevant because people do have money to spend? You just need to make sure you're providing ample value to them. That's what I got. If you haven't already, jump on to GoBundance.com and apply. We've got a community for you, man, woman, millionaire, non-millionaire, whatever it might be, and we'd love to see you as part of this incredible community. But other than that, I hope it helps you. I hope it helps you change maybe some mindsets or get out of a rut. We've all been there. Trust me, many sleepless nights over the ruts I placed myself in. I hope this helped you, and we'll see you on the next one.